Warning. The following chapter has some profanity in it towards the end. Just so you know. Moonlight on Open Graves, Chapter 6.
Breakfast was the busiest time of the day at the Hicks farm. So many mouths to feed. First to eat was the impatient and perpetually nervous horse Annabelle and her mellow mate Clyde, the former Clydesdale rover. Then 18 cow and Mac the impotent breeding bull, Welsh Holsteins all. Then came old Jack the lonely goat, and also needing feed were Shag Nasty and Broke Beak Bart, the two gander goslings recently arrived from the Mosleys farm. Verne was raised to believe that no real farm was complete without two geese. Besides Shag and Bart, they were security geese and honked and flogged just about all intruders. Then some crack corn for 24 unnamed Rhode Island Reds and 2 cocky bantam roosters. Then came Phoebus and Calico, both cats. At some point, Abby's pet field mouse that she rescued from Phoebus, against Verne's wishes, needed food and fresh water. Then any human visitors were fed, and finally Verne and Abby grandly ate because at this point they had worked up an honest appetite. This was generally accomplished between 7 and 8 a.m. After that, the daily pattern slowed and more or less stayed that way all day long and on into the slumbering night. Verne, like his father who ran the farm before him, was at the center of the Hicks daily pattern, working more or less in harmony alongside of the other humans within the inner circle. And all those within said center had to work in harmony because any disruption of that nucleus caused disruption to the entire cell or the entire farm. If that happened, well, heaven forbid it. A good farmer's life and the lives of those near him took on the highest form of patriarchal and matriarchal importance. Like king and queen, they were responsible for all aspects of emotional and physical security, financial, adequate shelter, food, medical, and so forth, not just for themselves, but all the various subjects within their kingdom. Cats and dogs, horse, cattle, hens, owls, children, parents, and so forth. Farming is a massive undertaking. The summer sun had been up over an hour when Verne came into the kitchen through the back door. Only guests used the front door. He slapped the dirt and feet off his pants and announced, "Well, everyone's fed, so let's eat." "You want 3 eggs today?" Abby asked. "I got 7 new ones this morning, but I need to set a few aside for Ricky." "3'll do fine, Abby." He added, I'm getting enough milk lately. I might just clean up that old cheese press and set some cheddar up to age. That'd be nice. I love cheddar on my omelets and just about damn near everything. What do you think?" "Sounds good to me. Do it," Abby said, and she one-handedly cracked the eggs and split each onto the skillet's hot bacon grease with a crackling hiss. Verne went off then to clean up in the house's one bathroom. He had recently updated the Hicks farm with indoor plumbing, and he genuinely felt that move to be both wise and rewarding. Verne sat down and rested his bones for a bit. The paper was beside him. As he sat, he took a few minutes to both reflect and project. He was thinking about his older brother, Clarence. What was his current condition? Could he be somehow lured back to the family farm? Though he cut and sold firewood for a modest living these days, Clarence was still the best farmer Verne knew. But it had been a while since anybody had gone over to visit because, well, that's just the way Verne's brother wanted it. Fact was that Clarence wasn't well since their mother's murder back in 45. Verne's mind drifted back to that place and time that he'd last ventured out to his mad brother's home, and that was back in 48, while Verne was still recovering from his war wounds. There was a protracted peak of troubles at the farm. Abby, all of 13 that year, was virtually running the farm as Verne was using crutches moving painfully along on the long road to recovery from the German machine gunner's bullets. Because of that German's good aim that day back in 44, Abby and Verne needed help on the farm in 48. So Verne took a drive to his brother's house to see how he was holding up. And it was Clarence's birthday, and like it or not, Verne had picked him up a gift. The sun had recently disappeared below the horizon. A crescent moon hung low among the first night stars as Verne parked the truck at the base of a small hill by Clarence's house. He got out and looked up at the brick house that sat upon a lonely, barren hilltop like a hat on a bald-headed madman. The house was bleak enough, a 2-story square with a bad foundation. Because the foundation was shifting, there ran a gaping fissure from the ground and up the entire length of the brick front. The place looked cracked and wholly unwhole. There was a wide footpath to the house as the driveway ended at the bottom of the hill. Clarence wanted it that way. To that purpose, he'd even felled a large tree across the path to further discourage visitors. The sound of a lone violin played poorly greeted Verne as he painfully crutched it up the winding path to the house. Ever try walking uphill on crutches? Abby's dog, Jake, who was just a year old then, barked some at Verne until he recognized him. Then he came wagging up to him with eyes that said, "Thank God you came. Where have you been?" Jake wasn't Abby's dog at this time. He was Clarence's, until that day. When Verne was halfway up the hill, he heard it. From within the cracked structure, there came a severe degree of twisted insanity that troubled him yet to recall. First wavering, trembling scales up and down a violin neck. The notes would descend in undulating waves, halting up for a moment on the ebony fingerboard and wobbling flat to sharp before worming back down the board, tickling the nerves raw to the very bottom. Then back up, the pitch would climb much in the same manner it descended. Suddenly the violin ceased its screeching wail, and a man began to shout angry curses at the top of his voice. Vile, utterly insane things, blasphemous things from the extreme degree, and the rage and volume of it was tremendous. Verne rested here and there on the path and stared up at the place. The windows were lit up in a yellowish flickering hue because Clarence had no electricity and the house but used gaslight or candles. As he neared the house, Verne saw his brother through the lit window, for it was mostly dark out then. Clarence paced and ran about in circles throughout the first floor, ranting and railing, shaking a fist in the air with one hand and holding the fiddle and bow with the other. When he shouted and cursed vile curses, he did so with his face turned up to the one he mostly addressed, God. Verne paused at the door, deeply troubled and even a little afraid, as he knew there were weapons about in the house. The house contained a caged, blaspheming madman. Clarence's condition seems to have worsened over time. Hold on a second. Okay, sorry. Verne thought hard about heading back down the hill and calling the visit off, but love and concern for his brother caused his fist to knock loudly on the wooden door instead. At once the dementia within the house silenced, and heavy footsteps came quick and deliberate straight to the door where Verne stood. Verne, for his part, took a deep breath and stood firm, head up, chin out. His brother was both physically a large and able man. Mentally and perhaps spiritually, though, Clarence was an enigma. The door swung open violently. Clarence stood there, 30 years old that year, shirt off, wearing just loose trousers and heavy boots. His tall, pale, muscular body was scraped and red in places from who knows what a mad, blazing fire was in his one good eye. The other eye, or the withering empty socket, was hid behind a black patch. The victim of an accidental explosion of an old Damascus steel shotgun barrel in that fateful year of 1945, 3 years prior. The pain from his infected eye had driven him near insane that year. Then their mother was found murdered at the farm. This, on top of the other already unbearable injury, toppled Clarence off into the darkness, and he went to be alone with his pain on the same year Verne came back from the war with his own pain and suffering. Now he glared at Verne like a monster. There was no brotherly recognition in his one good eye as the demented voice that Verne heard minutes before shouted, "What the fuck do you want?" Verne masked his apprehension and said calmly, "I just came over to wish you happy birthday, Clarence." And Verne wavered inside a moment. Happy birthday sounded so silly in this setting, like bringing the devil an ice cream cone. But that is what Verne came to do. Happy birthday, brother. His Cyclops brother was silent and glared at him incredulously. Verne continued, I brought you something too." With that, he sheepishly held up a book. In a second, a startling transformation occurred in his brother. The raging fire left the eye, and the body relaxed. "Oh," Clarence said. He sounded awkward, exhausted. I'm sorry. Come in. Come in." Once inside, Verne formally pressed him with the book. The complete, unabridged works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Verne explains, "I thought you'd like Sherlock Holmes, so I got you this." His brother gently took the book and with a boyish but pained smile, thumbed through it with interest. They visited a while, listened to the radio some, and talked about current events. The topics of their recently murdered mother and their disappeared father were necessarily avoided. After a while, his brother, who rarely drank anything with alcohol, went to the cellar and came back up with a gallon-sized clay jug of hard cider, which Verne greatly enjoyed. He took a mighty slug straight out of the jug and exclaimed, "Damn, but that's good cider." "You always made the best cider," Verne said. "I laid it up 6 months ago, slow fermented in the root cellar, and I added a couple things I picked and dug." "Where's Abby?" Clarence seemed to have greatly calmed, and had put a shirt on and combed out his rat nest red hair. He got a couple mugs out and filled them. Verne answered. She's back at the farm working on homework. Oh, Clarence said. She said to tell you happy birthday. Oh, tell her I said hi. I can't stay long. I don't like leaving her there alone, Verne said. I better get going. And Verne stood up and finished the last of the large mug of cider. Damn great cider. You take care of yourself. Stop up to the farm sometime soon, Verne said. Clarence got up and walked with him to the door. Jake, a young dog then, was at the door. Say, why don't you give Abby Jake? He ain't shit of a watchdog anyway. Verne was taken a bit off guard by the offer. Are you sure? Clarence looked a little upset and unstable again. Am I sure? He said. Yeah, I'm sure. Take that damn dog with you. Now good night and thanks for the book. Halfway down the hill, one of Verne's crutches slipped on a wet rock, and he took a bad spill. He lay there on the ground. As he lay there on the ground, the violin's mantra began again, followed up by the shouting curses. Jake came up and licked Verne on the face, and that concluded the memory of his last visit to his self-estranged brother Clarence. Over the next 7 years, Clarence's fits hounded him so bad that nobody dared much to visit him or go near his house. For that matter, he didn't want any visitors. Yep, it had been a while since anybody visited Clarence. As Verne sat there ruminating upon that visit, an idea was born. Maybe it was time he called on Clarence. Stop by and see how he was doing. The idea caught and took root, and it grew until Verne smiled as he sat there and said aloud, Yep, and I'm going to do just that. And with that conviction sealed, he arose, put the paper back in its place, pulled up his jeans and suspenders, and pulled the plunger on his brand new toilet. As he washed his hands at his brand new sink, it occurred to him that he got many an inspiring idea on that little white porcelain seat. Verne chuckled to himself about that and was still smiling when he came down for breakfast. Abby had been working on her hair, getting ready for her boyfriend's arrival. During the second cup of coffee, Verne decided to open the topic of Ricky's impending visit. So, Ricky's still coming? Yep, so far as I know he is, Abby said. What time do you reckon? Verne said. He said in his letter sometime this afternoon, and he also said he bought a new car. New car, Verne replied. Is that so? What sort of new car? Don't know, Abby said. Find out soon enough. New car. Ricky's doing well for himself, Verne said. Abby was excited in a happy way that infected Verne with a happy way too. He got up from the table and stretched. Well, I guess I gotta go cut a load of alfalfa out in the west field today. Then I gotta fix that power takeoff on the baler somehow. You need anything to get that guest room into order? No, Abby said, I can manage. Well then, thanks for breakfast. And Verne deliberated. Abby, I know it's my turn to do breakfast tomorrow morning, but you do such a better job than me. Well, I thought it might be in everybody's best interest that you do all the cooking while Ricky is here as our guest, and I'll make it up to you somehow. Right, she replied. You're just trying to put one over on me, I know. But that's okay. I'll cook for you two hicks, no problem. Hick, eh? Verne said, and he laughed some. Yep, I'm a hick. Vernon P. Hick, Jr. And I feel like a hick today, too. Be back in around lunchtime just the same. With that, Verne grabbed his hat and hammer off the table and headed out the back door into the bright sunlight. Abby wasted no time in setting to work on putting the old house in the top form, starting with the guest room that was filled with dusty old boxes of books and general rubbish of the farm.